I'm Daryl Jones, and this is the story of how I discovered that the foundations of my life were far shakier than I ever imagined. For a long time, I was convinced I'd lived 24 blissful years of marriage with my wife, Sheila. Years that brought me pride, comfort, and the sense of a future that was secure. Turns out, I was dead wrong. Only the first 21 of those years were truly happy, at least from my perspective. Then, in a quiet and horrifying shift, Sheila decided she'd had enough and wanted out. She'd been seeing a man named Jeff Woods behind my back for 3 whole years, and they weren't simply flirting, they were tangled in a full-blown affair. I may be a grown man, but that revelation tore me apart. If Sheila no longer wanted me, I would rather she left than stayed out of obligation or pity, but by God, it still felt like someone had ripped the floor out from under me. Once the shock wore off, I tried to hold it together, remain calm, and accept that life had changed. We parted ways. But the worst blow came not from Sheila directly, but from my 3 children, Jason, Michael, and Kimberly. Turns out they'd known about Sheila's affair well before I got wind of it, and they'd made a conscious choice to hide it from me. I'd always believed that between father and children, there should be honesty when something huge was about to tear the family apart, but apparently they didn't share that belief. They justified it by saying they didn't want to be in the middle. Or they thought it was best for the family, so they kept my wife's treachery a secret. That cut more deeply than I could ever have imagined. I still don't know how long they wrestled with that decision, or if they even wrestled at all. Maybe it was an easy choice. Either way, they stepped onto Sheila's side of the line and left me to stand alone. I refused to waste away brooding in some cramped apartment after the divorce. Instead, I did the only thing that felt like forward motion. I bought a boat and started sailing the ocean. My time on the water became a silent refuge, a place where I could wrestle with my anger, heartbreak, and sense of betrayal. I did some freelance charter work on the side, but mostly I drifted literally and figuratively, not wanting a permanent home. I thought that would be my life from then on. Endless miles of ocean, waves that calmed me, and the simple clarity of reading wind and tide. 7 years passed like that, with minimal contact from my former family. Then, out of nowhere, Kimberly called me. I remember standing on the deck, feeling the sun baking my arms when I heard her voice on the other end of the line. She didn't give me any pleasantries. She told me Sheila had a new daughter named Karen, and that Karen's health was failing. They needed my help. They needed me to get tested to see if I could donate a kidney. I didn't even have to ask why me. The implications were plain enough. Kimberly spelled it out anyway. Karen was mine. Yes, my ex-wife had left, while pregnant with my child, and no one bothered telling me until that moment when they desperately needed something from me. My other kids knew too. They'd known for years. The betrayal I'd felt before was nothing compared to that. It stung like 1,000 angry hornets. I was done letting them decide my life for me. 2 told them I was leaving for Bermuda, shutting my phone off for good measure. I was in the process of untying the last rope from the pier when Sheila herself came jogging up the dock, panic in her eyes. She actually leapt the gap between the pier and my boat, probably a good 7 feet, landing with a roll on the deck. She latched onto a mooring cleat with a pair of handcuffs before I could physically shove her overboard. And I was damn close to doing that. "Daryl, I know you're furious," she said, her chest heaving with exertion. "But Karen needs your help. She'll die without a kidney. Please, don't punish her for my sins. I'm begging you. I know you're a better person than this." I stared at her, then let out a harsh barking laugh. "Oh, is that so? I'm only a good man when you need an organ, apparently. That's interesting. I wasn't good enough for you to stay with, but I'm good enough to harvest now that you need something." From the dock, I noticed a small girl watching us, terrified. She had to be Karen. She was too far away for me to see her face clearly, but even from where I stood, I could see the worry in her posture. She was calling out for her mother, her voice barely carrying over the water. "Mommy!" the little girl yelled, tears thick in her voice. Sheila shouted back, "It's okay, honey, I'll fix this." She turned toward me again, eyes pleading. "Daryl, please?" That darkness in me, all that pain, made me sneer at her. I calmly pushed the throttle forward. The boat started moving, gliding away from the pier. "Daryl! Darryl!" Sheila shrieked. "Stop! You have to turn around! She's right there!" "You should have thought about that before you decided to handcuff yourself to my boat," I said dryly. "I told you to get off. Now we're leaving." But Karen, we have to help her. She's your daughter." "I don't know anyone named Karen. I answered with icy precision. I never taught her to ride a bike, never kissed her goodnight, never watched her blow out birthday candles. She's just a stranger to me, the product of a woman who tossed me aside for another man. So kindly shut your mouth about what I have to do. Sheila's voice turned desperate. Look, if you won't do it for me, then do it for her. She's only a child, and she's yours, biologically, no matter how you feel about me. I stopped the throttle. For a moment, the boat kept drifting forward. Part of me genuinely wanted to fling her overboard, but I knew I'd probably get in trouble if I physically harmed her. Sheila, unlock yourself from my boat, or you'll see just how harsh I can get. She gave me a wild, desperate look and shook her wrist, making the handcuffs clatter against the mooring cleat. I can't. Jason has the only key. I looked over my shoulder and saw a handful of people on the dock, including Jason and Michael, plus that little girl. All of them were shouting something, but I couldn't make out the words over the engine's roar and the water's slap against the hull. Then I guess you're out of luck, I said, pressing the throttle again. The boat lunged forward, cutting the conversation short, and we surged into open water. Sheila slumped to the deck, clutching the cleat as if that gave her any kind of stability. I was so preoccupied with the thought of her existence polluting my personal sanctuary that I almost missed the Coast Guard's patrol boat coming up fast behind me. They hailed me over the radio and signaled me to stop. Let me tell you, when the Coast Guard arrives, they do it with authority and a goddamned cannon mounted on the front. I wasn't in the mood to get blown out of the water. I cut the engine, and soon enough, a Zodiac crowded with uniformed officers roared up. They boarded without any formalities, and the lead officer demanded an explanation. "She's kidnapped me!" Sheila cried out, voice breaking on the last syllable. She rattled her handcuffs in front of them to illustrate the point. The officer turned to me, took in my expression, and asked, "Is that true, sir?" I almost spat at the ridiculous accusation. "I didn't kidnap her," I said. "She jumped on my boat like a lunatic. If you can figure out how to remove her from my vessel, you can keep her. She's not exactly a welcome passenger." The Coast Guard guys looked at each other with that typical, someone's obviously lying expression. In the face of Sheila's tear-stained face and her handcuffs, I came across as the prime suspect. One of them scowled and said, "Sir, it'd help if you gave us the key to those cuffs." I grimaced. "I don't have any key. She literally handcuffed herself. I can't just magic them off her wrist." I guess that was a little too convenient for them because the next thing I knew, I had my wrists slapped in cuffs too. Some overzealous officer shoved them on pretty hard, nearly cutting off my circulation. I gritted my teeth. "I'm telling you," I muttered. "I don't have the key." They took a closer look at the mooring cleat. One of them grabbed a screwdriver and unbolted it from the deck to free Sheila, effectively reuniting her with the piece of metal she'd chained herself to. She stood up, rolling her shoulders and giving me a triumphant smirk. "Well, now you'll have to come back," she taunted. "You made a serious mistake." "Yeah, so have you," I snapped, glowering at her. But at this point, I was outnumbered and outranked. The Coast Guard took me into custody, not exactly gently, but without brutality. They questioned me for hours. I told them I wanted a lawyer, and that was that. Ultimately, I got slapped with a pending federal charge of kidnapping because Sheila had rung enough alarms, and I guess the feds wanted to come in heavy-handed. I'd never been a criminal in my life, and now I was wearing the label kidnapper. The next day, I was in a holding cell, reflecting on how quickly your world can flip. 24 years of marriage had ended. I'd sailed away, and now, due to a short meltdown, I faced actual prison time. The real kicker? Sheila came to visit me, with Jeff Woods at her side. The mere sight of him made my blood boil. He wore this smug expression, the kind of smirk that suggested I was just a tool, a means to an end. Sheila pressed her hand against the glass partition, as if that would somehow convey warmth. "Look, let's move past all of this," she said. "If you donate your kidney, we can forget what happened out on the boat. We'll drop the charges. We'll go back to our normal lives, and Karen will live." She swallowed hard. "You'd be doing an amazing thing, saving someone's life. Think of how you'll be a hero again." Jeff nodded in silent agreement, arms folded. His stare was unwavering. "We didn't want to come to this, but Karen is dying. It's that simple. If you care at all about doing the right thing..." I cut him off with a single, flat statement. "It's interesting," I said, "how you're so comfortable telling me to do the right thing. Where was your moral compass when you were screwing my wife behind my back for 3 years? He stiffened, reddening at my words, and Sheila's eyes watered. "We're sorry for what happened," Sheila said, her voice trembling. "But we can't rewrite the past. We just need you now. Karen needs you." I gave them a razor-thin smile. Oh yes, of course, now I'm needed. I tapped the glass with the tip of my finger. We'll see how the trial plays out. Because here's a little heads up. If I'm stuck behind bars, you can't get that kidney. I'm pretty sure no judge is going to force me onto an operating table while I'm serving time. So maybe I'll just plead guilty and see if that lands me a solid 7 years. Karen can carry on. However she can. Sheila's face turned a sickly pale, while Jeff hissed something under his breath. Wait, you'd let a child die just to spite us? I leaned back, feeling the plastic chair squeak under me. It's not that I'd let a child die. I just don't see why you people think you can manipulate me after what you did. If Karen is truly my child, you had 7 years to let me know. You decided not to do that. Don't expect me to jump at your request. They started pounding on the glass, desperation overshadowing their sense of decorum. I almost felt pity for them, but the betrayal still tasted bitter. They left in a flurry of angry, fearful words, and that, ironically, was how I ended up with a lawyer, one they were paying for. He introduced himself as Matthew Hughes. He was a polished man, hair impeccably styled, carrying a sleek briefcase. "Good day, Mr. Jones," he said. "I'm here to represent you." "Really?" I answered, leaning forward. "Are you a public defender, or—" He gave a polite shake of his head. "No, Mr. and Mrs. Woods have kindly agreed to finance your legal defense." I laughed, though it had no humor in it. "So, are you their lawyer or mine?" Matthew offered a careful smile. "I see how that might sound. The reality is a bit complicated. They're paying me, but ethically, I represent you." "Yeah. How about we make that official? I want a signed, notarized letter stating that you represent only me, and that you've received a hefty retainer from them, so you're not going to suddenly vanish when they get squeamish about the bill." He raised an eyebrow. "That's fair. Yes, I can arrange that. You should have the documents by tomorrow." And so it was settled. I had a lawyer, courtesy of the people I hated most, ironically to help me out of a jam they'd put me in. The night before my bail hearing, I lay on the thin mattress in my cell. In that stillness, I had a lot of time to question who I was now, after everything that had happened. Normally, I like to picture myself as a decent man, but now I had an entire side of me that was consumed by bitterness. I wondered if I'd be able to live with myself if I refused a kidney donation for an innocent child. Let's face it, no matter how much I hated Sheila and Jeff, Karen was innocent in all of this. But my resentment had become a second heartbeat in my chest, pounding away. I also remembered how no one had been there for me when I'd been the one left drowning. Sheila had the kids, her new man, her new life. I'd had nothing and nobody. They'd turned away from me. Now, ironically, they wanted me to come back into the fold, just enough for them to harvest a piece of me. By the time I was released on bail, which was miraculously paid by them, I was more conflicted than ever. No sooner had I walked out of the holding facility than Sheila, Jason, and Kimberly were waiting to ambush me in the parking lot. The glare of the setting sun framed them like an ominous painting. Sheila's voice trembled with anxiety. "Daryl, we need to talk." I rolled my neck, trying to ease the tension. "You do realize there's a restraining order in effect because of the kidnapping charge you slapped on me, right? That means legally you shouldn't even be here." Jason pressed his lips together. "Look, we get that you're pissed. You have every right to be. But Karen is on dialysis now. Her condition is deteriorating quickly. We don't have time for grudges." "Grudges," I muttered. "Interesting choice of word. You hid your mother's affair from me. You gave me zero heads up that my marriage was about to explode. Then you let me live for 7 years not knowing I had another daughter." My voice rose with every word. "And you call my anger a petty grudge?" Michael wasn't there at that moment, which made me guess he was off on some Navy mission. The three of them tried to form a united front, but I could see cracks in their composure. They were worried. Kimberly stepped forward, tears brimming in her eyes. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I was young. I didn't want to lose Mom, and I didn't want to lose you. I was torn in half. I know that's not an excuse, but it's just how it was. None of us wanted to be in that position. But it's done. Karen had no say in any of that. She didn't choose to be hidden from you. If you don't help her, she'll die." "Lots of children die," I said coldly. "You're acting like each child's life is guaranteed, which it isn't. And from what I understand, there are other donors out there. You don't have to come crawling to me." Sheila attempted a calmer approach. "Daryl, we tested other relatives, and we tested me, but none of us are compatible. The doctor said the best bet is a biological parent who's healthy. I'm not healthy enough, apparently. My kidney wouldn't hold up, so we need you." That's ironic, I mused, given you once decided you didn't need me at all. Her eyes flashed with a mix of shame and anger. I'm tired of apologizing. How many times do I have to say it? I cheated on you. I took the kids away. I was wrong. But Karen, she's your daughter, a piece of you. If that means nothing to you, then by all means walk away. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. And if I do walk away, I'm the monster. Convenient, isn't it? Anyway, it's not like I have a choice. I let that statement hang in the air, turning my back on them and heading for my motel. After a few more steps, Jason shouted after me, "When did you become such an asshole?" I whipped around. That's rich, coming from you. I'm the asshole because I won't bend over backwards for a family that left me for dead. Maybe being an asshole is all that's left for me. He started yelling something else, but Sheila and Kimberly pulled him back, and I took that moment to duck inside. Early the next day, at the hospital, an attractive nurse handed me a clipboard with forms for organ donor screening. She was friendly, maybe used to dealing with nervous potential donors. She thanked me repeatedly for my generosity, remarking on the selfless nature of the act. I didn't tell her how complicated the truth was. Then in walked Sheila and Kimberly. They both froze when they saw me with the nurse. The nurse, oblivious to our tensions, gave them a radiant smile. Are you family? You must be. We always appreciate when family members step in to save a loved one. We can't do it without you. Sheila forced a tense smile. Yes. I'm, the mother of the recipient. This is... She glanced at me. He's the biological father. The nurse frowned slightly. So you two are... At odds, I said curtly. My ex-wife. Let's leave it at that. Sheila tried not to scowl in front of the nurse. What matters is that we're all here, right? She directed the question at me with a forced brightness. You won't regret it. You'll save Karen's life. We can be... Well, you'll be a hero at least, and maybe we can find a way to be civil afterwards. I gave a non-committal shrug. We'll see what the test says. Then as soon as the nurse was out of earshot, I turned on Sheila with cold fury. But don't for a second think this means you can waltz back into my life and push me around. I'm letting them test me. Nothing is guaranteed beyond that, understood? She stiffened, her voice turning sharper. Don't you threaten me, Daryl. If you jeopardize this donation, you'll have your children, my husband, and anyone with a conscience coming after you. You'll be a pariah. I arched an eyebrow. I was a pariah already, remember? You made me one. Now you think you're scaring me with more of the same? Grow up. Kimberly stared at me, tears in her eyes. Can we please not fight? Karen is so weak right now, she can barely stand without wobbling. This isn't the time for a pissing contest. I resisted the urge to snap at her because her anguish looked genuine. Fine, I said. Let's do the blood tests and see if I'm a match. Then we'll talk next steps. As it turned out, I was a perfect match. The doctors were thrilled, believing it was a sign Karen would have an easier time accepting the transplanted organ. They had no idea how twisted the relationships were behind the scenes. Sheila was elated. I watched her weep openly, hugging Jeff, hugging my other kids while I stood to the side feeling like an alien. Soon afterwards, I faced a barrage of phone calls and texts from them, all wanting me to confirm a date for the operation. I realized I had the upper hand for once. They needed me. So I called a meeting, inviting everyone, Sheila, Jeff, my 3 adult children, and, ironically, my lawyer. I had some demands. I started by telling them that I'd discovered there were actually a couple of potential matches in the National Registry. So I'm not Karen's only shot, I said. But the difference is, I'm a sure thing, while the others might not pan out. So, yes, I'm willing to donate, but for me to do that, we need to set a few conditions. Jason's mouth fell open. Conditions? Dad, this is about saving a life. And you think that means I have to be a doormat? I snapped back. This is about me reclaiming a shred of respect for myself after everything you all did. Don't talk to me about how important life is. When I was drowning in despair, you left me to choke. So maybe I am a monster for turning this into a negotiation. But ironically, I learned that from you. If you don't like it, go find another donor. He clenched his fists, trembling with anger. You've changed so damn much. You were never like this. Sheila cut in. All right, enough. We'll hear your demands. But don't expect me to grovel. I let out a harsh laugh. Oh, I do expect you to grovel, actually. They all stared at me, incensed. But we'll skip that part for now. I placed 3 documents on the table. These are legal name change forms. I want each of my 3 older kids to remove the surname Jones. You can pick Woods or any other name. I don't care. If you want to call yourselves the Bamboozle family, that's fine by me. But none of you are going to walk around with my last name. You don't deserve it. Michael, who had recently returned from his naval duties, snatched the paper, scanning it. You've lost your damn mind. You want your own kids to disown your name. You disowned me long ago in spirit, I replied. Now we're just making it official. Kimberly rubbed her temples, tears threatening. Dad, please, is this really necessary? I can't imagine giving up my name. It's part of my identity. I shrugged. Your identity includes betraying your father. If you want to keep it, earn it back. Let's see what each of you is willing to do, because I have more demands, some tailored specifically for each of you. That set off a fresh wave of raised voices and heated accusations. Jeff flung in a few curses of his own, telling me I was a manipulative bastard. I hammered the table with my palm. Of course I am! Where do you think I learned that skill? You want me to donate my body part? Good. I want each of you to feel a fraction of the pain you caused me. Then maybe you'll understand what it's like to lose something you value. They glared at me, but I went on, unstoppable. Michael, I said, turning to him, Mr. Naval Aviator, the big tough pilot, if you love your sister Karen so much, prove it. I tossed a small mirror onto the table, along with a sealed bag. Inside that bag is some white powder. Let's assume it's illegal. Let's see if you're willing to snort a line for your sister's life. He recoiled, his eyes flaring with disgust. What the hell, Dad? That could destroy my career if anyone found out. Yeah, it could, I said coolly. I wonder how destroyed I felt when my wife walked out and you kept the secret. He stammered, face flushing red with rage. But hey, you're this big, brave pilot who risks his life for our country, right? Let's see you risk your precious career for your sister. If you refuse, then we know just how deep your loyalty really goes. Jason's turn came next. I handed him a key card to a motel room. Inside is a woman. She's not a prostitute per se, but let's say she's extremely open-minded. Spend 2 hours with her. Let a camera record the whole thing. Then I'll put that video in a safe deposit box with instructions to mail it to your wife if I happen to die. Because you all need to understand what it's like to have your marriage threatened by betrayal lurking in the shadows. That's my price for your involvement in the donation. His face twisted in revulsion. You can't do that to me. I have kids, a wife who trusts me. You destroy my family. You destroyed mine, I responded. So yes, I can and I will. You can tear that key card in half, or you can go and do what I told you. I'll be waiting for a text that you've completed the task. If you can't stomach it, then Karen's life means less to you than your own comfort. Kimberly shook her head, voice trembling. You're insane. Maybe, I admitted. Or maybe I'm just responding to the lessons you taught me. But let's move on to you, my darling daughter. We have an appointment at an OB/GYN clinic. You're going to sign for permanent sterilization. The doctor's expecting you tomorrow afternoon. Her eyes widened, and she gasped like I'd socked her in the gut. What? Why would you do that to me? You took my future away from me. You knowingly withheld the fact that Sheila was pregnant with a child. By doing that, you robbed me of the chance to be a father to Karen. So it's only fair that I rob you of motherhood. Let's see how you cope with that loss. Sheila burst out of her seat, nearly knocking it over. That's enough, she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. You sick bastard! You can't do this to my children! I stood too, leaning across the table. Oh, watch me. If they want my kidney, then yes, I can do this. I've spent 7 years with a hole in my chest where my family used to be. This is the price, and if you don't like it, go find a different donor. The tension was so thick it felt like a living, breathing thing in the room. No one said a word for a solid minute. Finally, Sheila sank back down. Daryl, she began, her voice hollow. I never expected to see you stoop to this level. You're inflicting permanent damage on your own children, all because you can't handle the pain we caused you. I gave her a bleak smile. Is that your official diagnosis, that I can't handle pain? Pain is all I've handled for nearly a decade. I'm simply returning the favor. Then I snapped the folder shut and walked out, tossing over my shoulder. Clock's ticking. Let me know how you decide. Over the next 2 days, all 3 of them caved in different ways. Michael licked the powder off a table, like a dog. I told him to do so just to degrade him further. He must have wept bitter tears afterwards, but apparently he swallowed his pride, and possibly something else. Jason sent me a single-word text at 2 in the morning. Done. I didn't ask for details, and I sure as hell didn't want to see the footage. The knowledge was enough that his marriage was likely irreparably cracked. Kimberly tried to reason with me, tears streaming down her face. But in the end, she showed up at the clinic. I watched as she signed the documents. The doctor needed a psychological profile before doing the procedure, so it got postponed. But the gut-wrenching fear in Kimberly's eyes told me she would have gone through with it, for Karen's sake. The next day, I gave them a final meeting. By now, they were all pale shadows of their former selves. The arrogance had drained from them. It was replaced by an anguished acceptance, like prisoners walking to the gallows. I explained that I'd do the donation the following week. They gaped at me. Sheila looked at me with more hatred than I've ever seen. You did all of this just to torment them. That's correct, I stated flatly. I wanted them to understand the price of betrayal. They took what was precious to me, so I demanded something precious from them. But I'll still do the transplant. Karen doesn't deserve to die for your sins. I turned to my children, who'd each suffered some humiliating ordeal. Consider this your baptism by fire. That's how I felt. Now you've been scorched too. No one replied. There was nothing to say that would magically fix the brokenness. A week later, I was in the hospital bed, counting the seconds until they gave me the anesthetic. Sheila and Jeff hovered nearby, along with Karen. She was so frail it hurt to look at her, but she had a bright mind. She recognized me as the donor. With a timid step, she approached my bedside. Are you my daddy? Her voice was small, quavering. I hesitated. I guess so, I said, half laughing, half crying. If you want me to be. She nodded and tried to smile, but her energy was low. Thank you for helping me. Before I could reply, Sheila hurried over and led Karen away, shooting me a grim look. I might have saved her daughter's life, but that didn't change the fact that I dragged her entire family through the mud. The surgery was a success. Karen's body accepted my kidney. The doctors called it a miracle of modern medicine. Meanwhile, I spent a few weeks recovering. I ended up in the house that used to be Sheila and Jeff's because they had nowhere else to stash me. My boat was at the marina, and I needed to be near a hospital for follow-up checks. The place was filled with pictures of them, not me. I recognized some of my children in the photos, older than the last time I'd truly known them. In some pictures, they all looked so happy. In others, I saw cracks forming. When I had enough strength, I rummaged through their belongings. I considered burning everything in the fireplace out of sheer pettiness, but something held me back when I found a small shrine in the backyard, a memorial to a family pet named Frodo. It was clearly important to Karen. She had left a circle of rocks and a faded plastic flower. I ended up leaving after a month in better physical shape than before, but my soul felt weighed down by the darkness of my own revenge. Yet, ironically, I also felt lighter, because I realized I was free now. I'd forced them to taste betrayal, forced them to see how it felt to be powerless. In my twisted mind, that had brought me some closure. It wasn't healthy or righteous, but it was something. After that, I traveled again. I hopped from island to island, sometimes taking on charter jobs to cover my expenses, sometimes just finding a beach bar where I could nurse a rum or a local lager. But the bitterness never fully vanished.